The Fort McMurray Public School District is committed to preparing all learners for the 21st century. From early childhood programs through high school, their students are following a path strategically, that's not easy to say, strategically designed to prepare them for their future. With a whole system approach, the division is educating their students to be engaged thinkers and ethical citizens with entrepreneurial spirit. This session will share their system-wide strategic approach for partnerships, programs, district initiatives, board decisions, and ongoing strategic actions focused on the success for each student. Please join me in a warm welcome to Doug Nichols, Superintendent, Linda Mywert, Vice Chair, and Stephen Drover, Trustee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to share part of your day today. We do appreciate it. For those of you that did make it up to Fort McMurray, thank you for coming. And for those of you that weren't able to attend, we hope to see you the next time when it's hosted up there. As I indicated in Fort McMurray when we had you as visitors, just a short 2 years in Fort McMurray, but there is really so much happening, and the reports of our death are greatly exaggerated, as someone once said. Student enrollment holds. Capital projects are on pace. There's a lot happening in Fort McMurray, even in some very difficult times for the area and for the province and country. So with that, welcome to our presentation. I want to say, again, just a couple other things before we start. Those presentations I observed and participated in this morning were just excellent. And I hope you agree with me. There's just so much from the original student perspective right through to board governance and so forth. The Palliser presentation, of course, again, talking about results and how that all occurred. So I know you enjoyed those as well. So we've introduced the folks who are here today as well. Jeff Thompson, our board chair, is here. I think many of you know Jeff at the back there, and Tim O'Hara, trustee. Jeff, of course, is a long time board chair. Fort McMurray, yeah, long, people are saying, Jeff, really long. But I have to say, like you as trustees and whatever your role is in this room, you give so many hours to students, parents, staff, and community. Thank you for that. And Jeff is certainly no exception. He gives up a tremendous amount of personal time, vacation time, to be at different events, so we really appreciate it. So on the system overview part, there's a bit of an overview there for you. I'm certainly not going to go through all that, but I do want to say that at one point Fort McMurray was really known for transition and numerous people coming and going and so forth. I can't speak for the private sector, but I can speak for FMPSD, and that is from at one point there were like 100 teachers coming per year to Fort McMurray. This year I think we hired around 20, and of the 20, 10 or 12 of them worked with us last year in a temporary probationary contract. The stereotypical Fort McMurray scene is changing a lot, and those of you that have visited and you've been up there in the last year or two will know, based on facilities, infrastructure, community overall, that things have changed a lot in Fort McMurray. And of course, the most recent development that's been publicized a lot on social media has been Highway 63, 99% twinned. That obviously is a game changer as well. So there's a tremendous amount happening there. There's a bit of an overview. Same with our administrators. We had a lot of, fair amount of turnover in administrators for a number of years, and that's settled right down too. In fact, the last 2 years we've had the same group. So things are definitely settling down, so we're very pleased about that. On the system overview side, I'll point out as well that grade configuration is a big challenge for us right now as we go into Composite High School going from a 9 to 12 to a 7 to 12. And those of you who have been through grade configuration changes, not quite like school closures, but grade configuration still gets a lot of people's interest. So that's something that we've been working on, and we'll continue to go down that path with our new construction. So the three of us are going to split, so I'm going to turn it over to Stephen at this point.
Thank you, Dick. Our first screenshot there is on partnerships. And there's an African proverb that goes something like, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you do it together. And we recognize at Fort McMurray Public School District that we need to do it together. And this is just a sampling of some of our partners within the community. I'm going to touch on a few of them as we go through. The first one is Alberta Health. Last Christmas, I had a lady in the community tell me what a nightmare she had to access mental health at Christmas time. It got so bad that she left Fort McMurray and went back to her home city. So in January, at the board meeting, I asked our Associate Superintendent, Dr. Brenda Sodner, about when a student has mental health, how do we meet that need? And she gave me an example of a student who a school counselor called and said, we have a student in need. And by the very end of that day, we were able to get that student in with a professional. And that stuff doesn't happen overnight. That's a partnership that is days, weeks, months, and years. But it's something that our school district is committed to doing to give our students the best that we can in our community. And it's great work that Mrs. Sodner is doing there. And if you guys ever get to see her presentation, it is excellent. Again, this is just a sampling of some of them. Another one I want to touch on is the Multicultural Association of Wood Buffalo. Fort McMurray is a very diverse school district. I call it a mini UN. I've heard people call it a mini Petri dish. In some of our schools, we drape the flags of nations that are representative, and we have over 60, dozens of languages represented. So what a perfect fit to have that association in one of our schools, right? Walter and Gladys Hill, one of our newest schools that we just opened up, we have their office in there. It is just an example of how together we can have common goals and alignments. Increasing our partnerships. Keanu College actually sits on almost the same footprint as our composite high school. So we're working very hard to align our courses and programming, teacher instructions, and visioning, how we can work together that all students could be looking at instead of grade K to 12, but really K to 16, whether it's through trades or through degrees. We have Marquez and a Christian School Society. Both of those components are growing rapidly in our school district, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later. Alternative programming. Right now, we believe that all students should have a choice. We have an Islamic school that is busting at the seams. Until last year, they shared one facility. Now we're sharing two. And I can say that when you work with the Islamic community, which I don't have a lot of experience with, there's a certain finesse to make that succeed. And I want to give full credit to our executive and our superintendent to meeting those needs head on. And it is a great example how in a public school system we can meet the needs of all students of all faiths. And that is rapidly our growing demographic right now. We have moved the high school students into our high school with our regular students. And you can imagine some of the concerns the parents had of young Mohammed going to a school that's known to be a little bit rougher, right? And a lot of anxiety by some of the parents. But through consultation, meetings, I believe going to them and understanding their concerns, hearing them, and coming up with a plan, we've been very successful. And those parents today will tell you that that is a huge success for them. And that program is going to grow. Our Christian school today has 220 students. Again, sharing a facility, desire to have their own facility because it's growing. We have peak athletics, passion, excellence, attitude, knowledge. The three areas we're concentrating in right now are hockey, soccer, and dance. If you can tap into a kid's passion, most likely they're going to stay in the school system. And we have a huge program there. have kids that have that desire to learn more on that, and we're meeting it. Frank Spraggins High School used to be called the Second Chance program. Again, something that's growing rapidly in the school district because of its success. Meeting students where they're at and helping them to achieve their best. Telling the story. I like to be an ambassador for Fort McMurray and also for the Fort McMurray School District. And one of the things we don't do well is brag about ourselves. It's easy to brag about somebody else or something else, but it's not in our nature as Canadians to brag about our individuals. But I gotta say that our school district, we have so much success going on, but we rarely told the parents about it years ago. And that's one of the things that had to change, to celebrate our successes. Our spotlight in education, every month, one of the schools will come down and highlight some of the stuff that's going on in their district or in their particular school. We have kids that come from robotics, loving it. Some on trips, some on drama. Whatever their passion is in that particular school, the schools come and have an opportunity to share with the board some of the exciting things that are going on. And it also brings out the parent. When your son or daughter is in that program, the parents naturally come out to these meetings. So it's helped increase their parent involvement also. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, email, newspaper. The students are now telling us that Facebook is getting a little bit old, so now they're into Instagram. We have a full-time coordinator who's working on all that for us. Also putting the message out on the radio stations. Right now, if you're a parent in Fort McMurray School District, you could turn on the radio while driving your kids to school and you'll hear announcements how grade 4 is today or Toonie Day or bring your skates because we got skating or sliding or something like that. We try to put the information out to parents through various means to meet the need in our community. Calendar. In our school district, we have right now 14 professional learning Fridays where the staff come together to learn best practices and the sharpening the saw. We calibrate our calendar also with the Catholic district to find alignment and the days that we could be most cost effective with our busing. We have 172 instructional days, and not sure if you guys seen the Rick Mercer report a few years back about Bring Your Kid to Rig Day, but in the BAS we had a challenge with a 4-day school week. And it was a challenge for us, but we worked through it with the parents, with lots of consultation, and again, to me, it made us stronger. And we've had to meet those challenges in the community with the dollars that we have to meet the needs of the students.
Health and wellness has become a strategic focus in our district. And all the more so now, we talked about this morning just for a few minutes at our table about the additional pressures on entire communities in an economic downturn. And so the partnerships that we've already built with Canadian Mental Health, Alberta Health Services, and other partners in the community to guard and safeguard the health and well-being of our staff, our students, ourselves, we place a high focus on that. So those are some of the things that we have on the go that focus on health and wellness. I'll get back to health and wellness on another slide when we talk about how we kicked off our school year this year. We have worked hard in different ways, but certainly similar to what our fellow district spoke to us about this morning, to become a school system rather than a system of schools. And you operate as you operate. You don't necessarily realize that maybe things could be better. As our fearless leader, superintendent, is well known for saying, if you keep doing the same things, you get the same results. And so a few years ago, we realized it was a process of administrative transfers that we realized that Within Fort McMurray Public District, we were still compartmentalizing. This is my school. And there needs to be a sense of ownership of a school, and we acknowledge that, and we encourage that. But what we wanted was, as a board, was a shift to being a school system, where we were all partners marching on the same road to do what's best for the kids entrusted to our care. And so we set about strategically to try and change the way of thinking, and I think we've come a long way. We have a district principal in place, and he does a lot of work with the principals of the schools. He's doing some school evaluating that principals are actually volunteering and saying, pick my school, pick my school. SAGE, Superintendent's Group of Educators, so an informal chance for staff in the district to sit down with the superintendent and let's talk about what's going on in our district. We see through this that we are no longer using the word, when we talk about our high schools and our elementary schools, we used to refer to the elementary schools as feeder schools, as if it was something separate, and now they are partner schools. And you'll see administrators and staff going back and forth between the high school and the elementary schools to build those bridges, to build those connections to the staff and to the students, so that when that grade 7 student arrives in the high school, they already can put some faces to the people that are there. It seems to have invigorated the staff. They're taking a more active interest beyond the walls of the school that they work in. And so they still have their schools. We acknowledge that, we get that. They wear their school jackets with pride, but they work as a team, and that's been a real welcome shift in our district. We started the 2015-16 school year with something called the Big Three. So we had all of the staff from all of our schools gathered at Keano College in the auditorium, and we did a kickoff that involved a couple of fun things, some music from some very talented staff that we have working for us, so some entertainment, and we focused on 3 big things: healthy schools, working towards a healthy planet in a high-achieving school district. And after the main get-together, we broke out into 3 sessions, each session being focused on one of those topics, to bring the entire district together in working on these things. We want to be healthy, we want physical health, we want mental and emotional health. That's one piece. The Healthy Planet piece, talking about some green initiatives. What can we do to model and to mentor young people to take good care of this planet, which they are inheriting from us? Are we giving them a rich inheritance, or are we not? So we had a mostly waste-free lunch for about 500 people that day to prove that that was possible. And we have one parent council that has really jumped onto the green scene, the whole green initiative, and they have initiated a move in their school to eliminate paper plates, plastic cutlery, cups, etc. when they have school get-togethers. And it was the most amazing thing. It reminded me of back when I was a wee dinosaur, to see families coming with a bag with their dishes for their family supper. We had almost 1,000 people fed at one school welcome back barbecue with, I would say, 95% of them had their own dishes with them, fed their families and took their dishes home. And so those kinds of little things that take time to develop, but that prove and model to our students that we care about this and we're prepared to do something. So the parent piece in that partnership is critical. That particular initiative was parent-driven. We have a high school that has a greenhouse. They are using solar power. They grew over 200 pounds of their own produce. This summer, they have now entered into an agreement with the Wood Buffalo Food Bank because there has to be some monitoring of what comes into the food bank. But they are now able to donate their produce to the Wood Buffalo Food Bank Association as well. So those are exciting things, and that fit in under our big three, healthy schools, healthy planet. And then the high achieving school district is just that constant challenging of all of us to ask ourselves the questions. Are we doing the most we can here? How can we help this student achieve? How can we help this one? What are we providing to enable them to be successful? And I really liked what Cole said this morning, that we talk lots about student engagement, but we need to talk more about student purpose. And I think that high achieving, it's a different line for each student. And if we talk about student purpose, I think that will help us to meet those students to achieve their high as well.
You can see some of the top priorities of our district, telling the story. I think it's pretty well known that, as Stephen indicated, we need a little bit more of that. The results piece, we're all looking for strong student outcomes. It's not anything new for any of us in this room. Also, the collaborative culture. I heard Palliser talk about that earlier this morning, how important that is. We all know that's the case. So all of these strategies have been leading into those three. And I want to talk a little bit about capacity building and the importance of sharing the wealth of information that's in this room. Speaking personally, Brianna, some of you met earlier this morning, right? She sat at your table. So she sat at our table, and I said, hey, perfect. We're going to VC you, and she's at McDonald High School, Archbishop McDonald High School here in the city. We're going to VC you into our student group. We're going to get you into our leaders group. Had a chance to talk to Kevin. Where is he? He was here earlier, Palliser. Kevin, we're going to VC him in as well to talk to our leaders group, district leaders. About 40 of them will be in attendance. Again, we're going to talk about results, some of the strategies that Palliser has used. Tomorrow I've got a meeting with Darryl Robertson, Superintendent of Edmonton Public. And same kind of thing. I want to see what Edmonton Public can bring to FMPSD and what we can bring back to Edmonton Public. So capacity isn't just a matter of something we're doing with QP members, AT members, district leaders. We're trying to do it throughout the district, and I know as trustees and as leaders in the province, you're all doing the same thing. I want to talk just on one bullet on this slide about SAGE. All of you will have a teacher board, or you'll have a C2 committee, or whatever you might have. This one, I thought, well, we'd do something a little different, and that is that we looked for innovators in the district. We looked for people with strong reputations in our district. And basically what happened was that I'd like to talk to those people just informally, without board system priorities coming out and without ATA priorities coming out. Let's just have a conversation about kids in the district. And we have no trouble getting people to be involved in that committee. Something we're using a lot of right now is just pointing out getting back to capacity, pointing out some areas where we think we can grow in, throwing it out there as a simple email, who wants to talk about this, 4:30 to 7. Sometimes it's difficult to get, particularly in the world of C2 and the framework agreement and so forth, sometimes it's difficult to get teachers to commit to that type of time. Not all. Many teachers are as busy as ever, and they're coaching and debate clubs, and they're doing all sorts of things. But it's very interesting to see our teachers, and that they are more than willing to have 20 people on a green scene committee, 15 on an outdoor ed committee that we started, 24 on a fine arts committee. So there's lots of involvement in terms of capacity going on through the district, and many of them are, of course, very similar. Most of them are not news to you, but we all spend a lot of time on the capacity building piece. Now, on the strategic side, regarding grade configurations, okay, there's a lot going on there. The Catholic system does well in Fort McMurray. It's a good, strong district, and they've moved to a 7 to 12 some years ago with different programs. We have some similarities with the Catholic system. We, of course, are different in many, many ways also. But project-wise, I see my friends back in Prairie Road sitting in the back there. I used to have some really long hair and was really thin, and then I went through 3 school closures in 4 years as superintendent. Okay? So it's interesting to see at this stage of my career, it's a different world in Fort McMurray. You know, we have 2 new schools on the go. We have a major modernization to the tune of about $25 million at Composite High School in downtown Fort McMurray. And we have Cole McTavish, which is just a booming school of about 700 kids, 7 to 9, which will be moving to a high school in 2017. So we have a fair amount to organize about programming and so forth, again, on the strategic directions, how we get that input from parents, community members, kids. That whole piece is going to be very interesting for us. And we certainly experienced that last year when we moved Composite High School through from a 10 to 12 to a 7 to 12, which will be happening in September. Oopsie. All right, we got Stephen up next here. I think.
Positive path forward. We always seem to be in a little state of transition. And with the new school, or the School Act ending and the Educational Act coming in, there's a lot of meetings to make sure that everything's in alignment. Everything from ASBA to our board handbooks to policies, to making sure that everything works together. To do that, we have several meetings throughout the school year, and to sit down and really look at our plan for the long term, to make sure that we're always on track and going where we need to go. Reviewing some of the effectiveness of some of our meetings. Now, I'm a newer trustee, and one of the first meetings where I came into, we had a really good discussion about what was working, what wasn't, and really what were we doing just to be busy, and got rid of that. And you know, if I could leave you with one thing as a board, get rid of those things that are just making you busy, but you're not seeing the full impact of or value of, right? Nobody needs a meeting just for the sake of a meeting. Reviewing the number of trustees sitting on the board, that is always a challenge because everybody is busy in a different stage of life. In our particular board, we're 1 trustee down for probably a year. You know, it's always a challenge to meet people's schedules, but it's important. Reviewing our documents, going through them at board meetings to make sure that they are renewed and relevant. Strategizing a political advocacy group. Holding joint regional municipality of Wood Buffalo Council board meetings. Advocacy. Recently we had a group in who were talking about trying to run some special games for 55 plus. Trying to work with the community to have alignment.
I hope my Fitbit is calibrating all this stuff. This is wonderful. Again, up here, I would just put on one bullet. I'm not sure how many districts are heavy into robotics right now. Quick show of hands, active robotics programs. Okay, about half the room. About half the room. It has exploded in Fort McMurray, and a lot of engineer background, a lot of science interest. So we ran a tournament. It started about 3 or 4 years ago. It started with 4 teams. Last year, there were 4, I'm talking elementary, junior high, there were 47 teams that competed. Only 43 of them were ours, but what can I say? Okay, so that kind of thing really, again, is interesting. And getting back to diversity and strategic directions, I never view myself as a great cricket advocate. Maybe there's some people really interested in cricket in the room. I suspect there will be. It's a worldwide played game. But I'm often thinking, right, traditional hockey, volleyball, basketball, those kinds of things. But of course, in diverse communities, there's all sorts of different sports that are key. And so now we have cricket going in Fort McMurray, which is kind of cool. In fact, there's a push to do a lot more of it. So I'll leave you with that. We have a traditional other areas that we've been talking about there, but there's a couple I would highlight from FMPVC.
So I've spoken to the school system and some of the positive collaboration that comes there. These slides just highlight some other successes. The positive working relationship and communication pathways between CUPE, between our ATA, certainly have strengthened, and we work hard to make sure that we maintain those relationships. It doesn't mean that we don't sometimes sit and meet and disagree with one another, but it means that we can agree to disagree and know we focus it back on the lens of what is best for the students. So we are really enjoying a positive work relationship with our unions right now. As trustees, we visit 2 schools. We are set up, I guess I should explain that. We are set up not in a ward system. All 14 of our schools are under the charge of all 5 of us as trustees. So we don't run in a ward, we run for a position on the board of Fort McMurray Public School District. So with our monthly committee of the whole meeting, we start every monthly committee of the whole meeting by doing 2 school visits, about 45 minutes to an hour. We show up at the schools. This is all prearranged ahead, and so the administrators will have decided what they are going to highlight for us on that particular day. Quite often it's a student-led tour. We visit classrooms, they show us programs, they show us the new industrial arts lab. That is entirely up to them, what they decide to do with us for that 45 minutes. We are there to listen and to see and to make that school real in our own minds for as much as they can show us in those 45 minutes. Our senior leadership team is extremely active in the schools. They wear out the soles of their shoes going back and forth to the schools. You can see the number of visits that they do. We do some fun things within the district just to make sure that there's this camaraderie, and if we work together, we absolutely need to be laughing together sometimes as well. We need to take our work seriously, but ourselves not too seriously. So we've had a talent show. We do some fun things, like I said, at our welcome back. We speak with our students. We have lunch with our student speak out and our student advisory teams. We give opportunity for questions. We give opportunity for them to tell us about things. They can contact us past that. Our networks committee is a coming together of our school councils, and we have networks on a monthly basis, and then twice a year we do what we call our joint networks committees, and that's where staff and administrators and parents come together. And we usually pick some fairly significant topics and have senior executive in to address budget. We find that the more we explain and teach, particularly our parent groups, about budget and the challenges that we face and the ways that we maneuver through those challenges, the more buy-in we have. And so we have worked really hard to be more open, more transparent, and help them to understand these pages of numbers and what exactly does this mean in terms of your child in the classroom and what resources are in your school. So we feel we've had great success with that. Like I said before, it feels so much now like we are really that school system. We are moving forward as a team to do what's best for the kids in our care. When we were asked to do this presentation, what would your board legacy be? Well, we never know exactly what our legacy will be until after we're gone, but we feel that we've made great progress, and that one of our legacy pieces is that relationship of trust with our stakeholders, with our parents, with our staff, with each other as executive staff, as board members, that we have just really built a community of trust. And when you trust each other, you work together as partners. And so we feel that that's happening. We've done major consultations on the grade reconfiguration, on calendar, on budget, and the more time we spend, the more trust there is built. We will see a number of new schools opening. We are working hard to have an elementary school open for next fall, and then the year after another elementary school, and to complete the modernization of our high school. That will be a legacy. We opened a new school in 2011. That was the first one in 26 years. Change doesn't happen quickly, but when it happens, it's great. We're operating under a balanced budget, and that has not always been the case. We feel that's a legacy that will be left behind. Our strong senior leadership team and a good working relationship between Superintendent Nichols and his team is key to the successes of our district. And we as a board, of course, will wear the successes and the downfalls, but we give all the credit due to the folks that work with us and that answer our questions and that seek to get the information and the data that we need. We want to be data-driven on many of these big decisions, and our senior leadership team works extremely hard. We have a very good relationship with them. As part of that, I would be amiss to not to mention our Superintendent Nichols, Executive Administrator, who has put together this PowerPoint for us, and like our sister board as well, it's easy to get up and talk from a presentation. We met, we put the ideas in, she put it together, so. We are aiming to complete the alignment of our board policies, district policies, operational procedures, to weed those out a little bit, make sure we have them in the right sections, to clarify for trustees in the future, for the board in the future, and for staff, just where those things are. Sometimes we operate for so long under a certain set of policies and guidelines, and we felt it was time to review them and just make sure that they are still relevant. With education changing, with our district changing, with our operations changing, it is our responsibility to make sure that our policies, our procedures are relevant to the day, and that they are serving our students to the best way possible. We are proud of our district. We are proud of our community. We're happy to call it home, and we are privileged at Fort McMurray Public School District to be doing what's best for kids. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you would just hang for a second. Would you take some questions?
We can, if you want us to.
Are there any questions for Fort McMurray?
No? Okay.
Did I hear somebody say? Oh, yes, Jim.
You said you're down one trustee? Would you be filling that position, or what's happening with that?
We have a trustee that is on a leave right now due to some family circumstances. So we've been we're not down one trustee in the sense that the position is vacant, but in the sense that she needs some time right now.
Doug, you talked about VCing some of this convention speakers and other people into your district. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I don't know how widespread this is provincially, but we obviously have the technology. I mean, we can pick up our phone and we can use Hangout from here to anywhere. Maybe the other districts are doing it more than I'm supporting an FMPSD, I don't know. But there's just that could be trustee to trustee, board chair to board chair. I know a lot of districts are doing some VC across the province and across districts. That's all good. But I don't hear as much as I think I should hear on the professional learning, professional development side of this. Most of the time what we hear is there's a webinar someone in the States offers and wants 10 of our teachers to pay $300 to be part of. But as an example, Kevin and I will organize something in the next month or so. We'll get him in. We've had different people come in VC to us in our Aspiring Leaders program. So I guess if you're not utilizing that to your full extent in your district, I'd ask you to consider it. I think there's a lot of resources out there that are underutilized in this area. So face-to-face is always great, but there's also realities of cost and time. And sometimes a 30-minute, 45-minute VC to a group of leaders or board-to-board is still really beneficial. So that's what we're going to be doing with, in this case, one of our strategic directions is on results. We don't have quite the results that Palliser has. Few do in the province, because I know Palliser's had a strong record of this over the years. So we're going to be talking about results to our leaders and our aspiring leaders, and talk about some of the strategies that we're utilizing and how we can perhaps benefit from some of the best practices in the province.
That's terrific. I think education is all about collaboration and sharing expertise amongst ourselves and others is really a wonderful thing. And you come to a conference like this and you hear some speakers and you're trying to write some notes, and if you're like me, if there's any ambient sound, you miss things because the hearing isn't there. Yep. To have that person react with your district leaders, to me is a wonderful thing to do. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes. Microphone Nazi.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about your 4-day week. Is that only during these 16 Fridays that you do PD, that you had the 4-day week, or can you explain that a little bit more to us? Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have a 4-day week. I think what I think Linda was alluding, or Stephen was alluding to, there was quite a bit of controversy in Fort McMurray about 3 or 4 years ago about 4-day weeks. In fact, when I was with Prairie Rose, I got a call on the 4-day week, sitting just outside of Medicine Hat, from the Calgary Herald, interested in what Fort McMurray was doing. So it was kind of big news at the time. We really just have the closest way to describe it would be a 9 out of 10. And many districts in the province use that sometimes, just schools within calendars. Unless things have changed, some districts have a fair amount of flexibility in their calendar with individual schools, depending upon needs. Anybody here from Battle River? Okay. Last I heard, Holden and Riley had true 4-day weeks. Anybody aware of that? Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So there's some that have 4-day weeks. We didn't have that. That was not actually as part of the proposal initially, but there was a bit of confusion. So it's 14 Fridays that are full days. Some districts have a half-day early dismissal, let's say, on a Friday. Those are gone in this year's calendar. We've maximized the full day because we felt the half-day PD sometimes didn't get as much accomplished as we actually wanted to.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I was just curious as if the downturn in the economy, if it's affected your numbers, your school numbers at all?
When we budgeted last spring, we budgeted and not politically, but we budgeted conservatively. And fortunately, our numbers did not drop as far. We are pretty much holding our own. We have seen some shifting within our schools, and there are a few numbers that are down slightly, but it's not nearly to the degree that we had thought it might. And so budget-wise, that worked out well for us. And family-wise, we're happy to keep our families in Fort McMurray, and we hope that the economy can continue to sustain them.
I'm going to grab one more comment on that. Give you an example, our new school, Walter and Gladys Hill School, in kindergarten grade 1, we have 100 students per level. Okay? That's one school. So many of you will be aware the birth rate in Fort McMurray is very high based on the average age of about 33, 34 in the community. It would be a little lower if some of us weren't there. But so it's up and coming, up anywhere between 12 still and 1,400 births per year in Fort McMurray. As we all know, that's 2 schools a year, right? So we're holding our own right now. Hopefully the economy improves. Jeff Thompson, of course, is involved in the oil sector. He knows it way better than we do up front here, but so far so good on the enrollment side. A lot of contractors, Jeff, were seriously impacted. I'm going to throw in a Fort McMurray plug here. I was on several rides on the plane, and I heard a fair amount of complaining, to be honest, the first year I was going up to Fort McMurray if we had a meeting in Edmonton or Calgary or something. And I'm thinking, I kind of like Fort McMurray. There's lots to do. Of course, though, I'm living there. And the contractor's valuable service, I understand that, to the oil sector, but they weren't living there. And I can say this to you, that the plane rides right now, there's a different tone on the plane rides than 18 months ago. But I hope things settle down for the oil sector. Obviously, it's not just key for Fort McMurray, it's key for everyone in this room, everyone in the country, that things settle down and that there's a viable energy sector that regains its strength in the near future.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Are there any other questions that people want to ask? Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Doug and Linda and Stephen. We appreciated hearing your story, and again, we saw a little bit of your city, and it's pretty spread out, and certainly lots of diversity there. So thanks again for being with us. We've got a little token of appreciation for you, so thank you again. Thank you very much.